I want to talk about John Morrison, obviously, who sadly passed away this week, but his place in the pantheon of Irish coaches is really secure. The outpouring of love, really, for him and for what he did as a coach was something that really shone through. He worked with a load of different teams all right around the country, and this was something that you wanted to talk about, Kieran, because you felt like he was a bit of a trailblazer in terms of just thinking about the game.
Yeah, just reading a lot of the reports that I've seen over the last 2 days is he just seemed to be that kind of step ahead, you know, from a long time back. You know, he was doing a lot of scenario-based training where it was kind of all drills at that time, you know, so very interesting. Never really came across him, but played again, you know, he was a manager of Mayo in 2006. With Mickey Moore, and when I won my first All-Ireland medal, so he was, you know, I remember him down in the hill that time when Pillar, I think, who was friendly with him, didn't like that the Mayo boys were down in front of the hill and went down and gave him a bit of a bash, almost to say, as can't believe that you've let this happen type thing. But no, like, he just strikes me from what I hear of all the talk of him and how fondly the players have spoken of him as, you know, a real players guy and a real innovative coach, which is always interesting.
Yeah, David Brady's on the line to talk to us a little bit about this. David, it's Valentine's Day. It's an appropriate day to be talking about this because John was a man who liked to send his players Valentine's cards.
Yeah, look at it. I suppose 13 years ago today we arrived at training, and after you have your usual meal, but we were brought into kind of a darkened room with candles and lovely red roses on the table and red napkins, and it was going, Jesus, Morrison's up to something here. And yeah, each and every one of us, and it was actually a guy, Pat Casey, who was on the panel at the time, kept his card, and it was great to see it this week again. We all got a card, and my card was from Sam Anta, that she loved me and what we were meant to be, and Pat's card was a Valentine's card from she was May was her name, May O Win Sam. And it was just, you know what, it was just the small things. Now, they were incidental to what he did really on the pitch, because that's what, as you said this week, and Kieran said it, has just shone through. There's a lot of people, Jerry, I suppose, in this life that I would call mercenaries in GAA, that their real intention is not to improve people, but to improve themselves and probably their pocket. But I would say John Morrison was, for me, a missionary. And whether it was Donaghy, Derry, Leitrim or Mayo, he left an indelible impression, but he also left you with something to work on, whether it was as an individual on the pitch or off the pitch or as a team. And when you go back, like, he only spent 11 months in Mayo, but he was just phenomenal. And from a personal perspective, he go, you know what, Dave, great catching. You can catch anybody, said, but I don't know about the way you come down. And he kind of broke down the millisecond from catching a ball to hitting the ground, what you needed to do, what you needed to be planting, where you needed to be pushing off, driving off, your toe pointing, your knee extending, and you're going, it sounds awful complicated, but you're right, John. And that was the beauty of the man. He definitely, and if the likes of himself and Mickey Whelan, for me, and knowing what people have said, they were just light years ahead in terms of thinking and everything else. And it's you know what, it's a sad loss to GA, because he had an insight, he had an input. I heard Turlock O'Brien talking this week, who actually came down to our dressing room in 2006, 13 years ago, into a county team dressing room to listen to our drills and talks. And Turlock said, you know what, there was great fun. And John said to us, whoever comes in will learn, but they won't do it with as much love as we do it. And that was just the man.
Yeah, there was a few parts of that really that got you thinking. That the bit when you were talking about it was just drills as opposed to situational based things.
Yeah, what was he on the training ground, DB? What was he? You know, what kind of separated them apart? Was it, like, obviously what you're talking about, the cards there is almost, there's a bit of sports psychology in that, probably ahead of its time, but what was it a lot of scenario based stuff? Was it really new to you as a player 13 years ago? Because I know it would have been, you know, it wouldn't have been something that would have been done at that stage.
You know what, it was, Kieran. You go back to not even the pitch, but before we got onto the pitch, you know how people explain what I want you to do in this drill on the pitch? It was, we spent 30 minutes, 25 minutes inside saying, this is what we're doing. This is where I want you to be. This is where I want you to line up. And this is what the thought process in it. He says, we won't get it right. But we, from a style of play, like we had calls like, and we still laugh at them as when we meet up now and again. It was like the nut, the dice. There were like setups. There was the double dice, which would have, the dice was 2 and 2 forwards up front. The nut was 3 in a triangle and 2 guys coming left and right. You had your, you know, whatever side you were attacking on the right side, you wanted to go nut on the left. You wanted to go dice on the right. It was just like, now you could actually picture, and you know what? It give from us and Mayo. Now, Barry, you sure are boys hammering us in a final, but it just give us that kind of freedom as players to say, you know what? Let's create space for each other and let's work for each other, because it probably wasn't there in a lot of occasions in the build up to that.
Yeah, like calls are something that are coming, you know, so popular now with kick-outs and, you know, even forward play. That sounds super interesting that was going on 13 years ago, because I know we would have never been, I don't think we would have been talking in them terms 13 years ago. Like 11 months, got to an All-Ireland final, had a really good year. You know, obviously, would you have, you know, should Mayo have kept the 2 lads? Would you have, you know, what was the future holding for you at that stage? Was everything going well? Because, you know, yeah, like, you know, that game was a bit of a freak game in 2006, the way it unfolded, we'll say. But like, you had a really solid year that year.
And you know what, guys? Guys like, say, like if you take example Kevin O'Neill, for example, who had kind of came out of the wilderness altogether. They just said, you know what, these guys can play a ball. And the way that Mickey and John set us up, it was that kind of freedom that they got. But you know what, I never seen John Morrison from after the All-Ireland final in September 2006 until about, I'd say, 9 years later. And it was in the athletics grounds in Armagh. And it wasn't a handshake, it was a hug. And you're kind of going, it was a bad ending, because it was more internal than it definitely wasn't the players that had any say in John and Mickey not coming back after year 1, 11 months reaching an Ireland final. It was an internal county board matter, okay. But I'd have loved for him to stay. But you know what? And this is the truth, and everyone across the country is coming out and saying it this week. He stayed in touch with so many, whether it was managers or players, and he was giving out advice left, right and centre every single day of the week to every corner of the country. And you can see it in guys that is writing. I seen Kieran Shannon's article this week, Declan Brothers. They're fantastic examples of what he still did behind the scenes. And I know from a certain amount of Mayo players that were in the panel at the time, and Andy Moore will be an example, they still had time, and the players still had time for them, and you can never stop learning. But I'd always say, if we could harness what John Morrison has given people, or if you could collate it, because his articles were brilliant. He definitely was. He was a missionary, because he wanted to spread the word, and that was of football and how he thought it should be played. And he was. You know what? He was great crack. And I go back to the belt in the back, the pillar gave him.
Did he send you in to belt me in the back in that final in 2006? Because
I should have done more than belt in the back.
Well, I tell you one thing, you did enough of it when you came in.
The whole thing with Pillar, he goes, I bet you it was Morrison that put them up. And John was going, Mickey was going around and saying, how dare you? And Morrison, all he was saying was, I love you boys, I love you, I love you. Because he loved something like that. And again, Pillar respected, because Pillar had learned from him, or been in contact with him, and still afterwards, as many intercounty managers were. And you know what, there's you could spend your lifetime in a club, Kieran, or a county, and not come across someone that says, you know what, you really made an impression. And what people said this week, and a sad passing, was it was the way that he made them feel as well. That was the big thing with John Morrison. And
just to confirm, DB, it was all entirely your idea, and you were happy that John Morrison has carried the can all these years with Pillar.
No, you know what? Fair play to John. He thought inside the box and outside the box, And you know what, boys? It's great, Kieran. All the best for the summer, and I hope you find your feet. I hope you find your tongue. Get a little bit of confidence.
You're not worried about me finding my tongue, are you?
One thing you need to stop doing, boy. You need to stop buttering me up. Someone said to me, Donaghy's on all week, and all he's doing is buttering me up. But hey, we'll cross swords during the year, and I look forward to it.
No bother, bye.
TV, good stuff. Thanks a million.